this case on the penalty of law.
Hey, there's a thing here, transcript thing.
You can just keep it there, sir. Have a seat.
Okay.
Put the microphone close to you, please. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name's Isaac Baruch. ISAAC BARUCH.
Mr. Baruch, where do you currently live?
I live in Los Angeles.
Do you know the plaintiff in this case, Johnny Depp?
Yes.
How do you know Mr. Depp?
I know him since teenagers. We met in Florida.
And could you tell the jury a little bit about your experience meeting Mr. Depp when you were teenagers in Florida?
Yeah, we were both playing in bands. We had mutual friends, and that we met in probably 1980. And yeah, we hit it off. We got along with each other, and yeah.
How often did you see Mr. Depp when you were teenagers together in Florida?
A few times a month. I'd say it could be more, a little more or whatever, because, you know, we'd see each other at parties and clubs, nightclubs where the bands played. Yeah, like that.
And for how long were you both living in Florida and seeing each other somewhat regularly?
Well, we met in like 1980, so and then we both moved away. He moved to California, I moved to New York. What was that, 80? From 80 to 83. That was that, like 4 years?
What were your impressions of Mr. Depp while you were both living in Florida at the same time?
Oh, he's a sweet kid. A sweet guy.
Sir, wait, there's an objection.
Oh.
Thank you.
What his impressions were back then?
Or what's the relevance?
Just establishing the background and the relationship, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. Next question, please.
All right. Mr. Baruch, did there come a time when Mr. Depp moved away from Florida?
Yeah, yeah.
And where did he move to, if you know?
Like I said before, he moved to California.
At some point in time, did you also move to California?
Yeah.
And did you reconnect with Mr. Depp when you got there?
Yeah.
Around what time was that?
Sometime during the first year, and then afterwards, after the first year, more and stuff. Yeah.
About what year would you say that was?
Oh, I moved to California in September of '85.
And did you know if Mr. Depp was working when you arrived in California in 1985?
Well, I knew he was pursuing acting at that time. Yeah, he's looking for work because he's pursuing acting.
How often did you see Mr. Depp when you first moved to California?
Well, like I said, the first year, a few times. Afterwards, I had a friend whose girlfriend lived in the same building as Johnny, and so then hanging out over there, I ended up seeing Johnny more often. And plus, my friend, who I'm talking about, whose girlfriend lived in the same building, he was playing in a band, and they needed another guitar player, and Johnny ended up joining the band, so we were hanging out a lot more often.
What were you doing when you moved out to California?
I was pursuing music also, working retail jobs and trying to get a band, make a band, you know.
Did there come a time when you began working for Mr. Depp?
Oh, yeah.
When was that?
Oh, that's later on. That's like in 1993.
What were you doing for Mr. Depp when you started working for him in 1993?
Well, he owned a place called the Viper Room, and which is a music venue, nightclub, bar, and bands play. And it was already open for 6 months. And the girl who was working, the person who was working as office manager didn't want to work there anymore. So the guy who was running the place for Johnny, who was a friend named Sal Jenko, another Florida friend from back in 1980, when we all first meet, he calls me up and he says, "Hey, Isaac, do you want to work this job?"
Hearsay.
I don't think it's offered for the
I don't
truth
think
of the
it's
matter.
relevant
so
either. I mean, can we
That's
take-
fine. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
At some point in time, did you stop working at the Viper Room for Mr. Depp?
Oh, yeah.
When was that?
Well, I worked from 93 to 98. In 98, I moved away.
Did you return to LA again at some point?
Yes, I did.
When was that?
I moved back December of 2002.
What did you do for work when you returned to LA?
Well, for 2 weeks, I worked at an art gallery, and then I went back to the Viper Room on New Year's Eve.
How long were you working at the Viper Room at that point in time?
It was another year, and then the place changed hands.
Were you working on anything else while you were working at the Viper Room in that time frame?
Yeah, I was sidewise. I was teaching myself art.
And what steps were you taking to teach yourself art at that time?
Books, learning how to draw and paint, and taking community college classes.
At some point in time, did you begin pursuing art on a full-time scale?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, I was working at the Viper Room, taking classes, and then at one point, the club changed hands completely after a year, 2004. And I was given a choice of either keep working for these new owners, or Johnny, out of his pocket, was going to give a severance pay to whoever didn't want to work there anymore. So I took the severance pay, and then it helped me continue on to finish community classes, private classes, and then be able to transfer to Cal State University.
And did you get a degree from Cal State University?
Yes, I did.
What degree was that?
BFA,
What year?
2010.
After you received your BFA, did you continue to pursue art full-time?
Yeah.
Did Mr. Depp ever express an interest in your art?
Yeah.
When was the first time that happened?
Well, first time you saw a painting in 2008, and then the next time was 2012. I had made a painting and sent it to my best friend, in an email, and he forwarded it to Johnny, and Johnny emailed back saying, "Hey, when Isaac wants to sell that, whenever he wants to sell that, to go ahead and get in touch with me because I want to buy it."
Did Mr. Depp ever buy that painting?
No.
Why not?
Because when I brought over paintings, I had moved back to California, and I brought over a bunch of paintings for him to look at and see if he wants any, to buy any. And he looked at me and says, "I got an idea. How about I be your patron, and we put together an art show, make a body of work, and then I'll throw a party and invite people, and I'll sell the stuff for you, and you could keep all the money." So he didn't buy any paintings there. Instead, he offered me a complete patronship.
So what did you understand he meant by becoming your patron?
Well, he was going to financially make it possible for me to just paint every day and put together a body of work, so that way then it could be sold.
How did he plan to do that?
Objection to what he planned on doing.
What did you understand he planned to do
Well,
to make that possible for you?
I could tell you that what it included was that the next day I ended up moving into I moved into a art studio penthouse at the Eastern Columbia building. It was, "Listen, I got a place for you to go ahead and live and work and put this body of art together, and I'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything."
And what was the place where you were going to live that Mr. Depp offered you?
The Eastern Columbia building.
Did you take him up on that offer to live at the Eastern Columbia building?
Yeah, of course.
And how did that make you feel?
I started crying. One day you're in your mother's garage selling paintings for $100, $200, $300 on eBay. Next thing you know, it's an art show, and like you don't have to worry about Diddley Squat. Of course. I was flipping out.
When did you move into the Eastern Columbia building?
The next day after we met and we talked. The next day, I get a phone call from a guy named Kevin Murphy who is working for Johnny, and and he says, "Hey, meet me at this address." And I go and I meet him, and here I am in front of this building. This is a beautiful building. This is like, it's 13 floors, but it's like from the 1930s, some Art Deco, beautiful building. And I'm looking, I'll go, all right, this is unreal. What, there's going to be, all right, it's going to be one of these apartments or whatever, one of these places here. I go in with Kevin Murphy. He takes me all the way up to the roof. We go into penthouse 2, and I walk in and I'm like crying, going, it's beautiful. This is like a mansion situation to me.
Mr. Burch, how long did you end up living at the Eastern Columbia building?
3 years and 7 months.
Your Honor, I'd like to show the witness plaintiff's exhibit 116.
All right, 116.
Am I looking at something?
You will in a second, sir. It's not on the screen. Paper copy. We're just going to pull up a paper copy for a moment. We can see it, but he can't see it. Good, sir. All right.
Thank you.
We'll just use the paper copy. We'll get this resolved at lunchtime, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Burch, do you recognize the document that you're looking at that's been marked as plaintiff's exhibit 116?
Yeah.
What is it?
This is the floor plan of the roof. All the penthouses up on the roof at the Eastern Columbia.
And that's the building where you lived starting in March 2013, is that right?
I moved in the first week of March 2013. Yeah.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move into evidence, plaintiff's exhibit 116, please.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 116 in evidence. You can publish to the jury.
Is it, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I just want to be sure that.
Yeah, they can see it in the gallery. See it. We'll just have to work on
All
that
right,
screen.
thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Baruch, can you describe for the jury what is depicted here in Exhibit 116?
Yeah, so the right side of this graph is there's a pool there. There's another top of another apartment that actually starts on the floor below. It's a 2-story apartment. But there's a pool there, and there's a gym, workout room. And the left side, there's at the bottom, there's an X, and that's the elevator. And so you walk out of the elevator, you make a little left, and there's part of Penthouse 5 right there, straight ahead. And then you keep walking straight, and then you make a left, a sharp left, and the actual Penthouse 5 is straight ahead. And then you hang a right, and you start walking up that way. On your right is going to be Penthouse 1. On your left is going to be Penthouse 4. When you get to the end of that corridor, is the door for Penthouse 3. And if you hang a right, oh look, there it is, it came up on the screen. And if you hang a right, and you go down to the end, is the door to Penthouse 2. That's the apartment that I lived in.
And who did you understand owned these penthouses?
Oh, Johnny owned them all.
Which one did you live in?
Penthouse 2.
Was anyone else living in the penthouses at the time that you moved in March 2013?
No, I was the first one to move in. I moved in the first week of March, and then a couple of weeks later, 2-3 weeks later, then Johnny and Amber moved in, and then after that, the next one to move in is Rocky, Raquel Pennington, Amber's friend, and then at some point her sister moved in, Whitney, and also at some point Rocky's boyfriend moved in with her in Penthouse 1.
So I believe you just testified that Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard moved in shortly after you moved in, is that right?
Yes.
And which penthouse did they move into?
Penthouse 3.
And then you testified, I believe, that someone named Rocky Pennington moved in?
Yes.
Who was Rocky Pennington?
Amber Heard's friend from Texas, and I think they made them, I don't know, I'm not sure if they told me that they moved out there together or something like that, but yeah, her friend.
And later you said that her boyfriend moved in with her. What was his name?
Josh Drew.
And which unit did they live in?
Penthouse 1.
And I believe you also testified that Whitney moved in. Who was Whitney?
Whitney Heard. She's married, so she's got a different last name. I'm not sure what it is. But Amber's sister, Whitney.
And which of the units did Ms. Heard's sister live in?
4.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your relationships with Ms. Heard, Ms. Pennington, Mr. Drew, and Ms. Heard, sister?
Oh, yeah. I was friends with all of them. I loved them all. They all treated me with respect. It was great. You know, I'm an old-time friend of Johnny's, living there, and we were looking out for each other. We became great friends. I fell in love with all of them.
When you moved in to Penthouse 2, you were working on an art show with Mr. Depp, right?
Yeah, that's the entire reason that I'm there, is to work and put together this art show.
Did you have a time frame that you expected to be able to put on that art show?
At first, when we first powwowed this idea, when, you know, we talked about, all right, what do we do? You know, what's this show going to be? How many paintings is it going to be? And we came up with a number. Okay, so there's going to be a certain body of work. I'm not a known person. I'm just some schnook painter. If I was a famous painter, I could make 5 paintings and the room will fill up. But so we decided, okay, like 25 pieces of work, large scale, and Johnny says, hey, how long you think this will take? I said, I've never done it before. I don't know, maybe a few months.
And were you able to complete the paintings in a few months?
No, it's after. It took me in order to make 2 large scale paintings. It took me like almost 2 months. And I'm start freaking out, going, I'm only got 2 paintings, and all right, I got to do 25. I said a few months. So I ended up going to Johnny's place and saying, hey, look, dude, this is going to take a lot longer than a few months. I could only make 2 paintings.
And how did Mr. Depp react?
He looks at me and he starts laughing and he says, Ike, don't worry, I do not care. I just want you to paint however long it takes. I want you to paint every day.
During the course of the time that you were living at the Eastern Columbia building, did Mr. Depp ever give you any money?
Yeah.
How much did he give you?
Over a period of 4 years of the patronship, I ballpark calculated probably around 100,000.
And how did you come up with that amount?
Well, from the first get-go, when I said, hey, look, I need dough, to buy stuff and to, do this, I ended up getting an envelope the next day with $5,000 in it. And then I budgeted it and stretched it out, and, and so every few months I'd get an envelope. It could have that I didn't know if it was going to be the same amount, but it ended up being the same amount, which was wow. So basically around $5,000 every few months. So in a year, it's $20,000. But then also there was maybe a year or two might have been that it was 5 times I had to ask for dough, or it was 4. And then on top of it, so right there, could be $80,000 or $90,000. And then on top of that, I ended up getting a herniated disc. He sent me to the doctors to get an MRI and see the doctor, get an MRI, and there was 10 weeks of therapy that he covered. So I throw that in there too, and I ended up coming up with the figure of $100,000. Could be a little less, could be a little more.
What was your understanding of whether Mr. Depp intended to be paid back for that money that he provided to you?
There's no, that's not even the thought of being paid back. This is something that he wanted to see happen. This is something he invested in. He knew he was going to spend money to make it happen, for me to survive and paint and create this thing that he wanted to see because he liked the art. And so there was no payback, and the whole thing was about him selling the art, so that way I keep all the money. He didn't expect anything. He was doing this as a friend, as he's done with many other friends.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay, and move to strike.
All right. I'll sustain the last sentence of his
And if
statement.
you could explain to the jury that striking means that.
Right, we've done that, but that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Baruch, did there come a time when you decided that you planned to pay Mr. Depp back?
Oh yeah, that for me, when he's told me he had money situation going on, for me it was like this guy just changed. He's been making it possible for me to live and work and make product, and I'm by that expense, I'm part of the problem. It's like, how do I help him? How can I help him? I mean, he's sharing his sandwich with me, It's like, how do I share that my sandwich with him? Give him that half to make something up. You don't not do anything. And said, the only thing I got is paintings. So I stood up when he's telling me what he's telling me about his money situation. And for me, I said, hey, if these things ever sell, we got to split this 50-50, and I ain't taking no for an answer. Something. I got to put something into this. So for me, I looked at it like he has to get something back.
Mr. Baruch, during your time living at the Eastern Columbia building, did you develop a relationship with the defendant in this case, Ms. Heard?
Yeah.
And did you get along with Ms. Heard?
I loved her. I fell in love with her just like Johnny fell in love with her. I fell in love with her. She's totally respectful, gracious to me, that she's got great teeth, that she treated me with complete respect. Anytime I walk into the humor-wise, total locker room humor, demented humor, totally laughed at, the jokes, made the jokes, totally got along with her. Every time I walked into their place, Isaac, you want something to eat? Isaac, you want something to drink? Every time. There's only one time I remember that she didn't offer, because I walked in and she's in the kitchen at the counter and she's doing a beauty facial mask, and so she can't offer me. And I'm going, hey, is that something that can help me? And she looked at me and she goes, no. And I'm laughing, and then she laughed after because she didn't realize she was making a joke. So, yeah, I loved her.
Mr. Baruch, did Ms. Heard ever visit you in your penthouse?
Yeah.
Do you recall the first time that she visited you there?
Yes.
When was that?
The first time is that